My parents ignored me my whole life, treated me like a servant, then showed up uninvited to dump my brother into my apartment, until I made one cold decision that caused their dark plan to quietly fall apart for good finally. Yeah, that was me, Matthew, 22, male, youngest kid. I was never the star, never the problem child, just the one expected to be fine. Years later, when I finally built a life for myself, my parents suddenly decided I was the responsible one and tried pulling me back into their circus. Let's just say it didn't go how they planned. Growing up in my house was like living in a circus where every act was about somebody else. My brother Peter was the star athlete who blew out his knee, and suddenly every conversation at dinner was about his comeback or his physical therapy sessions. My sister Kylie was the troubled one who had a permanent subscription to therapists and clinics. Noah, the middle one, got the dyslexia card, so it was meetings with teachers, tutors, and crying over homework at the kitchen table. And then there was me, not the star, not the broken one, not the special case, just the extra, the normal one, as my parents loved to call me when I dared to ask why nobody seemed to notice me. I'll never forget it. I was probably 10, and I straight up asked my mom why nobody ever came to my basketball games. She didn't even look up from shoving insurance papers into a folder. She just said, "You're the normal one. We've already got enough on our hands." Translation, you don't matter right now, maybe never. From then on, I understood my role, background noise. Useful only when something needed doing. If Peter needed ice packs, guess who was told to fetch them? If Kylie had another meltdown, guess who had to stay quiet so mom could focus? And if Noah forgot his homework folder for the 15th time, guess who got sent to run it over to school? Spoiler, not the parents, me. My dad, Robert, had a talent for only speaking to me in commands. Take out the trash, mow the lawn, fix the router, grab me a drink. I was like the unpaid handyman errand boy. If I dared point out that maybe they only talked to me when something needed doing, he'd hit me with the classic, "You should be grateful you're normal. You don't know how easy you have it compared to your siblings." Oh yeah, my bad, Dad. Thanks for the privilege of invisibility. I tested them sometimes just to see how little I mattered. I'd stay out riding my bike until it was pitch black. No calls, no texts, no search party. I'd skip dinner and go straight to my room. Nobody knocked. Nobody asked if I was hungry. One time, just for fun, I stayed at my friend's house the entire weekend without saying anything. My mom's only comment when I walked in Sunday night was, "Don't track mud on the carpet." That was it. It's not that they were evil, they were just so wrapped up in everyone else's problems that I became the convenient, easy kid, the one they didn't have to worry about. But when you're treated like a piece of furniture long enough, you start to believe it. I remember one Saturday perfectly. Peter's knee was acting up again, so Dad had him stretched out on the recliner like he was some war hero, wrapping bandages while Kylie screamed upstairs about how nobody understood her. Noah was at the kitchen table sniffling over a worksheet. And me? I was in the corner, Xbox controller in my hands, trying to beat Halo 3 on Legendary. Nobody even looked my way until Dad yelled, "Trash is full, take it out." That was my existence, a walking trash disposal unit. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't weak about it. If anything, it made me sharper. I learned quick that if I wanted anything, money, attention, respect, I'd have to get it myself. If I wasn't going to be the golden child, I'd at least be the one who saw through all the BS. The crazy part is sometimes I almost preferred it that way. Being ignored meant I had freedom. Nobody checked my grades, so I could do my homework in 15 minutes and spend the rest of the night gaming. Nobody asked where I was going, so I could bike across town to the park and shoot hoops until midnight. The neglect wasn't loud. It was quiet, the kind that sneaks up on you. Like when you realize you're the only kid who never had a family photo at their sports game. Or when your parents can recite Kylie's entire therapy schedule but can't remember your teacher's name. I stopped trying after a while. No point showing them a test I aced. No point inviting them to a game. Why bother? They'd just shrug and tell me to be thankful I was normal. So instead, I leaned into it. I became the sarcastic kid who laughed things off, the one who didn't need anyone's approval. Looking back now, I see it clear. I was never the priority, not once, not when I was 9, not when I was 15, not ever. My family's energy was a pie, and by the time they cut slices for everyone else's problems, there wasn't even a crumb left for me. But here's the thing. You can ignore me all you want, but you don't get to come back years later and suddenly act like I'm the dependable one. But before that showdown, I had my crew, Ryan and Chris. Without them, I probably would have turned into some bitter kid hiding behind video games 24/7. With them, I was still sarcastic, still overlooked, but at least I wasn't alone. We met in middle school, all three of us drifting toward each other like magnets. Ryan was the kid with divorced parents who used him as a middleman for their screaming matches. Chris was the kid whose dad bailed early and whose mom worked herself into the ground just to keep their fridge half stocked. Me, I was the normal one at home. Translation, the invisible one. Together, we decided if our families weren't going to notice us, we'd notice each other. We even gave ourselves a name, the Ghosts. It started as a dumb joke, but it stuck. We were all ghosts in our own houses, there but not really seen. The ghosts didn't need family dinners or parent lectures. We had Ryan's basement, Chris's basketball court, and whatever junk food we could scavenge from gas stations. Our hangouts ranged from gaming marathons to late-night basketball matches under half-busted streetlights, but our favorite spot, hands down, was the abandoned warehouse near the train tracks. Broken windows, graffiti everywhere, floorboards that creaked like they'd collapse any second. Basically, the perfect clubhouse for 3 kids nobody cared to check on. We'd climb up onto the rafters with flashlights, sit on old crates and vent. Ryan would complain about his mom forgetting to pick him up again. Chris would joke about burning frozen pizzas at 2 a.m. I'd sit there and tell them how my parents only remembered I existed when the trash was full. We laughed, we roasted each other, and for a couple hours it felt like life didn't suck. Of course, we pushed our luck one night. We'd brought a couple of sodas and chips, messing around with Ryan's crappy Bluetooth speaker, blasting old Linkin Park like we were headlining a concert. We didn't notice the flashing lights outside until Chris peeked through a broken window and said, Guys, we got company." Sure enough, 2 cops walked in through the side door with flashlights. "You boys think this is a playground?" one of them barked. We froze like raccoons in headlights. Next thing we knew, we were lined up outside the warehouse, hands in our pockets, pretending we weren't terrified. They weren't cruel about it, just annoyed. Trespassing. Unsafe property. You could have gotten yourselves killed. Then came the words that made my stomach drop. "We're calling your parents." Ryan groaned. "I'd rather do community service than deal with my mom." Chris whispered, "Bet my mom's too busy working to care." Me? I didn't even know what to expect. My parents hadn't noticed when I was gone entire weekends. Why would they suddenly show up now? But they did. An hour later, headlights cut across the gravel and my dad's car rolled up. My mom was in the passenger seat, arms crossed like she was preparing for war. Ryan's mom showed up muttering about lawyers. Chris's mom looked half asleep in her diner uniform.
But mine?
Oh, they were something else. The cop explained the situation. We caught them inside. Dangerous place. They're lucky we came by. Most parents would have been angry but worried. Mine? My dad didn't even thank the officer. He just looked at me with that disappointed squint and said, "What the hell is wrong with you? Trying to grab attention now?" My mom chimed in without missing a beat. "You're pathetic. Do whatever you want, but don't drag us into it. We already have enough on our hands." The cop gave them this look like, "What the hell did I just witness?" I wanted to laugh. I mean, who says that? Most kids get grounded. I got told I was pathetic and ignored on the spot. Even Ryan's mom, who had just chewed him out in the car, shot my parents a side eye like yikes. They didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't ask why I was there or if I fell through the floorboards, just scolded me for wasting their time, then told me to get in the car. Not because they cared, but because I was an inconvenience to them. The drive home was silent. Dad's jaw was tight. Mom scrolled her phone. I sat in the back seat, staring out the window, thinking about what they'd said. Pathetic, attention-seeking. For a second, I actually wondered if I would have preferred being screamed at or grounded like Ryan and Chris were. At least that would have meant they gave a damn. Back at school, the ghosts turned it into a running joke. "Hey, tension seeker," Ryan would say, tossing me a basketball. Chris would laugh, "Careful. Don't bring us into it, bro. We already got enough on our hands." We laughed. Yeah, but it stuck with me. Even when I messed up, I wasn't worth their energy. That night was when I fully accepted what I'd suspected for years. I could set myself on fire in front of them, and they'd just complain about the smoke. So, yeah, the ghosts weren't just my friends. They were the only people who actually noticed when I existed. And every time I thought about my parents' faces outside that warehouse, sneering like I just ruined their evening, I felt this determination building. One day, I wasn't just going to leave that house. I was going to make sure they realized exactly what they'd thrown away. That became my quiet mission through high school. I didn't say it out loud, but every time my dad barked an order or my mom brushed me off, the thought sat in the back of my mind like a switchblade. You're going to regret this. To pull that off, I knew I needed money. Freedom isn't free, especially when your parents treat every dollar like it belongs to the real kids in the family. So I picked up my first job sophomore year, sweeping floors at the local garage. Mr. Ramirez, the owner, was this grumpy old guy who chain-smoked outside the bay doors, but he respected hard work. If I showed up on time, didn't complain, and kept busy, he'd slip me extra hours. I wasn't just sweeping for long either. I started shadowing the mechanics, learning how to do oil changes, rotate tires, swap out brake pads. It beat the hell out of sitting at home waiting to be told to mow the lawn. Plus, I loved it. Cars made sense, unlike my family. The first paycheck I brought home, I made the rookie mistake of leaving the stub on my dresser. Noah found it because of course he did. The next day, my $50 cash was gone. I confronted him, and he had the nerve to laugh. "Relax, you'll make more." When I told my parents, Dad didn't even blink. He probably needed it more than you. Be grateful you're not struggling like your siblings. Yeah, thanks, Dad. Great parenting strategy. Reward the thief, punish the responsible one. I got smarter after that. Cash checks, kept the money in a tin under a loose floorboard in my room. That stash was my ticket out, and nobody was touching it again. Meanwhile, my car obsession paid off. By junior year, I had enough saved to buy my first ride, a beat-up '98 Honda Civic with peeling paint and a dented bumper. Most people would have laughed at it, but to me it was freedom on four wheels. I'd spent months changing oil and scrubbing grease just to afford it. And when I handed over the cash, I felt like a king. Of course, my parents immediately ruined the moment. The day I parked it in the driveway, Dad looked at it like it was already his. "Good. Now you can start running errands. Take your mom to the store tomorrow." No, I said. "It's my car. I bought it." "Don't get smart," he snapped. "You live under my roof. You do as you're told." That was the closest I'd ever come to flat out telling him to shove it. Instead, I just smirked and drove to Ryan's house, blasting music the whole way. My Civic wasn't much, but when I was behind that wheel, I didn't feel like the forgotten Mitchell kid. I felt like someone who was finally building his own life. Not that my parents noticed. They never once asked where I worked, how much I was making, or what I planned to do with the money. But someone did notice. Grandpa Patrick. Grandpa wasn't like the rest of them. He had this sharp way of looking at people, like he could see straight through the excuses. He lived a few streets over, quiet guy, retired carpenter. I started stopping by after shifts sometimes, still smelling like oil and brake fluid. He'd hand me a soda, sit me down at his cluttered workbench, and just talk. Not about my siblings, not about family drama, about me. One night I told him about Noah stealing my paycheck. He just shook his head and muttered, "Your parents are blind, kid. You're the only one in that house with his head screwed on straight." "Yeah, well, being invisible helps," I joked. But he didn't laugh. He leaned forward and said, "Don't let them use that against you. Being the one they ignore means you can build without them noticing. One day you're going to walk out of there and they won't even see it coming." That hit me hard. It was the first time any adult in my family ever suggested I was capable of more than mowing lawns. So I doubled down. I worked extra shifts, picked up side jobs, fixing bikes for neighborhood kids, anything that added to the stash under my floorboard. Ryan and Chris started talking about college plans, military options, escape routes. I knew I wanted college, not because I loved school, but because I wanted out of Oakwood, out of being background noise, out of being the normal one who didn't need help. But my family, they couldn't stand the idea of me doing anything for myself. Noah once borrowed my Civic without asking. Came back with a new scratch on the bumper, and my parents told me to stop overreacting. Kylie accused me of acting superior because I had a job, like working at a garage was some elite status symbol. And Peter, he made it his mission to snoop around my room, convinced I was hiding money, which, to be fair, I was. Every time they tried to drag me back down, Grandpa's words came back. "Don't let them use that against you." By senior year, I was done caring what they thought. My grades were solid, my job was steady, my Civic was still running, barely. And I had enough stash to at least start thinking about the future. I didn't tell my parents about college applications. Why would I? They'd either try to sabotage it or pretend it wasn't happening. Instead, I kept grinding. Every dollar I earned felt like one step closer to the door. Every sarcastic comment from my dad just fueled the fire. Every chore they dumped on me reminded me I wasn't staying in that house forever. Because one day soon I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to slam that door so hard they'd finally have to notice what they'd lost. And senior year, that's when I made it happen. By then, I'd already been working at the garage long enough to have a decent stash. Between that and Grandpa Patrick's quiet support, college wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a plan. I didn't tell my parents about applications. They didn't deserve to know. Ryan and Chris knew, of course, because the ghosts had a pact. We weren't just escaping Oakwood. We were doing it together. Ryan wanted CSU for engineering. Chris didn't care as long as it was far away, but he ended up applying to CSU too and got in. Me, English Lit, not because I loved writing essays, but because I liked tearing apart books and calling it homework. Plus, CSU was far enough to feel like freedom, but still within range for Grandpa Patrick to check in every so often. When the acceptance letter came, I didn't tell a soul in my family. I just tucked it into my desk drawer with my paycheck stubs. The less they knew, the less they could screw up, and they would have screwed it up. Case in point, one night at dinner, me eating in silence while Peter whined about his knee and Kylie ranted about how life was unfair. Dad looked at me and said, "So, you'll be starting at community college in the fall, right? Saves money." I almost laughed. Instead, I just shrugged. Yeah, something like that. That was the beauty of being invisible. They didn't notice details. They assumed I'd take the easy route, stay close, keep being their errand boy forever. Joke was on them. When move-out day came, I didn't stage some dramatic announcement. I'd been slowly shifting my stuff into the Civic for weeks, a couple boxes at a time, nothing obvious. By the morning I was leaving, I just had a duffel bag and one last box to go. Of course, that's when my parents finally noticed. Mom spotted me hauling the box out and frowned. "What's all that? Spring cleaning?" I said deadpan. She nodded like it made sense and went back to scrolling her phone. Classic. But when I carried the duffel bag through the kitchen, Dad looked up. "Hold up. Where do you think you're going with all that?" "College," I said casually, dropping the bag by the door. The look on their faces was priceless, like I just announced I was joining the CIA. "College?" Mom repeated like the word was foreign. "Yeah, CSU. I got in months ago, leaving today." I said it like I was telling them the weather forecast. For once, they were speechless. Then the entitlement kicked in. Dad narrowed his eyes. "So, you just decided this without telling us, without asking for our help? Pretty sure you guys didn't want to be bothered with me, remember? I'm the normal one, right? The one who doesn't need attention." That stung. I could tell by the way Mom's lips pressed together, but she recovered quick. "If you're leaving, that's fine, but leave the car keys." I stared at her, then at Dad, waiting for the punchline. They were serious. "You want my Civic?" I asked. Dad crossed his arms. "You bought it while living under this roof. That makes it a family asset." I couldn't help it. I laughed loud. "A family asset? You mean the car I paid for with my job? The one you never lifted a finger to help with? You want me to leave it here so Peter can crash it or Noah can pawn the stereo?" Dad's face went red. "Don't be disrespectful." "I'm not being disrespectful. I'm being realistic," I said, tossing the keys in the air and catching them. "This Civic is mine. I earned it. You didn't even notice when I bought it. Now you want to claim it? That's pathetic." Ryan and Chris pulled up in their cars right then, honking like idiots. Perfect timing. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and looked at my parents one last time. "Look, you guys made it clear I was just the normal one who didn't need anything. Fine, but you don't get to claim what I built for myself. You had years to pay attention, and you didn't. So, don't suddenly act like you're invested now." I opened the door, and before I stepped out, I added, "Oh, and don't wait up. I'm not coming back." Their jaws dropped, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of arguing. I walked out, got in my Civic, and revved the engine just loud enough to make Dad flinch. Ryan leaned out his car window and yelled, "Ghosts on the move," and Chris started blasting music from his Toyota. For the first time ever, I wasn't background noise. I was the one in control. 2 days before Christmas, my phone lit up with Mom. She hadn't called in months, but suddenly here she was, like I'd been waiting on her schedule. I was in our apartment kitchen with Ryan and Chris, trying to make sure the oven didn't blow a fuse while we prepped our broke college holiday dinner. The whole place smelled like garlic powder and burned rolls, but it felt more like family than anything back home. I picked up half expecting it to be a wrong number. "Time are you coming home?" Mom asked flatly, like we'd been coordinating this whole thing for weeks. "I need to know how much food to make." "Home for what?" I said, even though I already knew. "Christmas dinner, obviously." I leaned back in my chair and laughed. "Yeah, not happening. I've already got plans here." There was silence. Then her voice came back sharp, that tone she always used when things weren't going her way. So, you're choosing your friends over your family? Yeah, I said. Because my friends are actually my family. Another pause. I could hear Dad barking in the background about some missing remote or whatever else was his crisis of the day. Then Mom came back with a guilt trip classic. I guess we'll just make do without you again. Sounds like every other year, I said and hung up. Ryan glanced over from the counter, grinning. So, Hallmark reunion canceled? Yeah, I said. Turns out I'm the Grinch. Chris threw a carrot across the room at me. Perfect. More pie for us. We'd been planning our own dinner for weeks. Not a big feast, one chicken that barely fit in the oven, mashed potatoes, a cheap pie Chris had insisted on baking himself. We even dragged in a tiny fake tree we'd rescued from a dumpster and decorated with paper stars. It was pathetic in the best way because it was ours. I thought that would be the end of it. But later that night, my phone buzzed again. Dad, this time. He demanded as soon as I picked up. Your mother's upset. You will be home for Christmas. End of discussion. Not happening, I said, stirring a pot of instant gravy. We're doing our own thing.
And I'm cutting off your college money.
I actually laughed so loud Ryan nearly dropped the pan he was holding. What money? You didn't pay for any of this. Scholarships, work, Grandpa Patrick? That's how I'm here, not you. There was this silence on the other end, like he hadn't expected me to throw that card. Then his voice rose sharp enough to make Chris mouth "Here we go" from across the table. Sure mouth. After everything we've sacrificed for you. I cut in, name one thing, just one. He hesitated, then went for the fallback move. You're being selfish. Your mother's hurt. Your siblings are hurt. I couldn't stop myself. Hurt. They didn't even notice I was gone half the time when I lived there. Suddenly, I matter because you want a family photo on Christmas. Pass. He sputtered something about gratitude and hung up. And just like that, the texts started rolling in. Peter's message was basically a novel about family unity. Kylie sent a passive-aggressive, "Guess you don't care about us." Noah chimed in with, "Mom's crying, man. You're acting like you're better than us." None of it landed. I just stared at the screen and thought, now you notice me? Years of being invisible, and suddenly I was the selfish one for not showing up on their timeline. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Grandpa Patrick. He picked up on the second ring with his usual gravelly voice. Yeah, they're losing it. I told him, apparently, I'm ruining Christmas by not driving 3 hours for the privilege of being ignored at the dinner table. He chuckled, not surprised at all, figures. They only remember you when it's convenient. Don't let them rewrite history. Dad threatened to cut off my college money. Ha! Grandpa snorted. He didn't pay for a damn thing and he knows it. You got here on your own and don't you forget that. I felt the tension drain out of me a little. You're the only one who actually gets it. That's because I watched it, he said. I saw them dump everything on your shoulders while pretending you were fine. You don't owe them Christmas. You don't owe them anything. When I hung up, Ryan tossed me a soda and said, So, you bringing the turkey carving skills to our table or what? Chris added, Yeah, screw their dinner. We're about to have the best broke man feast in Colorado. And they were right. That night, we set the little table in our cramped apartment, lit a candle we found under the sink and dug in. Half the food was burnt, the pie collapsed in the middle, and the smoke alarm went off twice. But I laughed harder than I had in years. Because while my real family was blowing up my phone with guilt trips, I was sitting with the people who actually gave a damn. And that was the first Christmas that felt like mine. No fake smiles, no guilt trips around the dinner table, no parents acting like I was some backup character in their drama, just me, Ryan, and Chris laughing until our sides hurt while a pie caved in the oven. For once, I didn't care what my family thought. I should have known that peace wouldn't last. A week into January, my phone buzzed with Noah's name. He almost never called me unless he needed something, so I was tempted to ignore it, but curiosity won and I answered. Look, man, he said immediately, voice low, like he didn't want someone to overhear. Don't freak out, but Mom and Dad have been talking. They think you should take Peter. I nearly dropped my pen. Take Peter? Like he's a stray dog. I'm serious, Noah said. They think you're the only one stable enough. You're at college. You're working. You've got your own place. Hold up, I cut him off. He's 23 years old. I'm 21. How in the hell am I supposed to be responsible for him? They just think, no, I snapped. Stop. Tell them no. I'm not doing it. Peter's their problem, not mine. Noah sighed. I figured you'd say that. Just be ready. He hung up before I could say more. Shoved the phone in my pocket, pacing our tiny apartment. Ryan looked up from the couch. What's with the murder face? They're planning something, I said, my parents. Noah says they want me to take Peter like he's a package getting rerouted to my address. Chris snorted. What? You running a halfway house now? Apparently, I muttered. Not happening. I thought Noah was being dramatic until I came home the next night. The second I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. Bags piled by the couch. Ryan cracked the door thinking it was me, and my parents shouldered right past him like they owned the lease. And there in the middle of my living room sat Peter, controller in hand, already halfway through a game of Madden on my Xbox. What the hell is this? I asked. He glanced up like I was interrupting him. Mom and Dad dropped me off. Said you'd help out for a while, just until I get back on my feet. I looked around trying to process it. They hadn't asked. They hadn't called. They'd literally hauled Peter over like he was furniture they didn't want in their house anymore. You're kidding me, I said. He shrugged. Relax, bro. It's temporary. Temporary. That word burned. I knew my parents. Nothing was ever temporary when it came to them dumping responsibility. I grabbed my phone and called Mom. She answered on the first ring, her voice fake sweet. Hi, honey. So glad you found Peter. Isn't this easier? Easier for who? I snapped. You can't just move my brother into my apartment without asking me. Bulldozing past my roommate doesn't count. You're the responsible one, she said. Like that solved everything. Peter needs stability. We can't handle him and his medical needs forever. You're in the best position to help. They called it medical needs. What they really meant was his knees still needed physical therapy and the stack of bills he refused to pay himself. You've got to be joking, I said. He's older than me. He's an adult. Why is this suddenly my job? Because we trust you, Dad cut in from the background. His voice was sharp, entitled, like he was laying down some royal decree. You've had it easy compared to your siblings. It's your turn to step up for this family. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. Easy? You mean invisible, ignored, treated like free labor every time the trash needed taking out? That's what you call easy? You don't understand sacrifice, Dad barked. We've carried this family for years. The least you can do is take responsibility for your brother. No, I said flatly. You don't get to ignore me my whole life, then dump Peter on me because I turned out normal in spite of you. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your backup plan. Mom tried the guilt card next, so you're just going to abandon your family? Peter needs you. We need you. You abandoned me a long time ago, I said. All I'm doing now is refusing to play along. I hung up before they could say more. Peter paused his game, frowning. That was harsh, man. They just want what's best for me. I turned on him, pointing to the door, and what's best for me is not babysitting a 23-year-old who still thinks playing Xbox is rehab. Pack your stuff. You're not staying here. His jaw dropped. You can't be serious. Dead serious, I said. You've had years to figure out life. I'm not sacrificing mine because you're comfortable being useless. Ryan and Chris, who had been watching from the kitchen, were wide-eyed. Ryan finally spoke. Guess it's eviction day, huh? Peter tried to argue, but I didn't budge. I stood there until he finally muttered under his breath, shoved clothes back into his duffel, and stormed out. He called Mom the second he hit the parking lot. I could hear her screeching through the phone before he even shut the door behind him. My phone buzzed non-stop for the next hour. Texts, calls, voicemails. Mom demanding explanations. Dad threatening me with consequences. Kylie telling me I'd betrayed the family. Noah telling me I should have just gone along with it to keep the peace. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I sat down on the couch Peter had just vacated, kicked my feet up and grabbed the controller. Guess it's my Xbox again, I said. Ryan smirked. Cold. I like it. Chris laughed. Bro just evicted his own brother like a landlord. Not evicted, I said. Freed myself. Big difference. And for the first time, I realized something. They weren't just trying to guilt trip me anymore. They were trying to trap me, tie me down with responsibility that was never mine. But I wasn't the background noise kid anymore. I was the one calling the shots. And I wasn't letting them write me into their script again. I figured after kicking Peter out, my parents would back off. Maybe stew in silence for a while. Nope. If anything, it cranked them up another notch. The texts rolled in non-stop. Dad sent long paragraphs about family honor like we were medieval knights.
Mom tried guilt-laced lines like, I didn't raise you to be this heartless.
Kylie chimed in with her favorite, one day you'll regret turning your back on us. Noah just sent a single line, you made things worse, man. I ignored every single one. Then a week later, the knock came. I opened the door expecting Ryan or Chris, maybe even the landlord. Instead, it was Mom standing there in her winter coat, eyes red, but not from crying, more like she'd been rehearsing. She brushed past me into the living room without asking. "We need to talk," she said, sitting on the couch like she owned it. I shut the door, leaned against it, arms crossed. "You have 5 minutes." Her lips tightened, but she pressed on. "Your father's health isn't what it used to be. His heart's getting worse. The doctors say stress is dangerous for him. We can't keep handling everything alone. Peter needs someone reliable. You're the only one who can step up." There it was again, the same script polished up with more guilt. "No," I said flat. She blinked like she hadn't heard me. "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated. "Not my job, not my responsibility, not happening." Her face crumpled, then twisted into anger. "So, you're just going to abandon your family?" I walked over to the door and opened it. "No, you abandoned me years ago. I'm just finally walking away." That's when the mask came off. She shot to her feet, voice sharp enough to rattle the picture frame on the wall. "You ungrateful little brat. We sacrificed everything for you. Food, money, time. We gave you a roof, and this is how you repay us." I couldn't help but laugh. "A roof? Please. You didn't even notice when I wasn't under it. I could have been living in Ryan's basement for all you cared. You only started remembering me when you needed a babysitter for Peter." Her jaw worked like she wanted to snap back, but the words wouldn't come. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Here's the truth. You don't want me. You want what I can do for you. Big difference. And I'm done." She tried one last shot. Tears welled up, her voice wobbling. "We are desperate, Matthew." "It's Matt," I cut her off, correcting the name she always used when she wanted to make me feel small. "And desperation doesn't erase years of being treated like garbage furniture in your house. You don't get to use me now because you ran out of other options." Silence, the kind that stretches so long it gets uncomfortable. Finally, she grabbed her purse, muttering, "You'll regret this." I held the door open maybe, but at least it'll be my choice, not yours. She stormed out. I shut the door and locked it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving their neglect. I was choosing myself. That night, I blocked every one of their numbers. Dad, Mom, Kylie, Noah, even Peter. Deleted them from social media. For once, the buzzing phone went silent and it felt like freedom. Ryan and Chris came over later bringing pizza. Ryan tossed a slice onto my plate and said, "So, what did she want, to move Noah in this time?" "Pretty much," I said, smirking. She tried the guilt routine, then the angry routine, then the crying routine. Didn't work. Chris raised his soda can to Matt, victor of freeloaders, slayer of guilt trips. I clinked my can against his, damn right. The truth was, walking away wasn't easy. A small part of me still wanted parents who gave a damn, but I couldn't live chained to that fantasy. They had years to prove they cared, and they blew it. I wasn't the background noise kid anymore. I was the one in control. And this time, there was no going back.